What's up, guys? Well, much like the box of wine, I think I've hit a redneck scale here a little bit. I have found screwdrivers in a can. So I don't drink, hardly ever. And I'm also having, peanuts. And in that time I decided, hey, let's shoot a video. Let's talk a little bit about comics. Let's do an old school Howlermouse comic book review and hope that I remember everything, because I don't do notes. I'm a one-take kind of guy. But a couple weeks ago in a video, one of those big long haul, well, I try not to make them long. My last, I think it was like 7 parts. I'd gotten a whole bunch of comic books and was showing them off, and got a few doubles there so I could have reader copies. And Sandman number 54, Neil Gaiman, Ron Talbert, Mike Allred, and that's the team that did this. But this is like right in the middle of the Sandman saga. Okay, for any of you Sandman fans out there, I may not have to explain too much. And for anyone collecting comics, if you haven't read Sandman, it's required reading. Sorry, you'll lose your comic book card. Anyway. But this is one of the stories about Sandman. Neil Gaiman is amazing. When I've read Sandman, when I started reading Sandman, the story seems so familiar. And I was talking with Tim Anderson, a few weeks back, and I think he's the guy that told me that going back and reading Neil Gaiman Sandman stories is like visiting an old friend, because the stories took place in real time. That series really did run from like 88 till 96 it got canceled, something like that. And this was a little arc of short stories. A lady and a man are in a storm, and they pull over to an inn, and we get a few issues of where they go inside of this inn called the World's End. There's a whole bunch of people sitting around telling stories, and they start, they're all from different worlds and everything. This inn, everybody is hiding from the storm, and what you end up finding out what the storm is alluded to probably the death of Sandman. And that's the thing about this story that was haunting me. This is probably my second or third favorite Sandman story, but I went back and reread it, and I didn't realize everything that was in here. This is probably why it was haunting, because there was so much more going on than just the straightforward story, and that's what I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to try to be clear and concise, because there is so much happening in this book that I never realized and stuff. But it always was at the back of my mind. First of all, what it is that Neil Gaiman gets another 70s DC C-list character, Prez Ricker. Okay, Prez had a little 4-issue series. It only lasted 4 issues back in the early 70s, and it was by Joe Simon. Okay, now if I'm remembering right, Joe Simon is the guy that co-created Captain America with Jack Kirby. But the other thing that gets me is that the 70s Jack Kirby Sandman series that came out in the early 70s, Neil Gaiman incorporated him into the stories. Okay, and I think it was The Doll's House. But I believe Sandman, that version of Sandman in the orange and red costume, and he had his dream whistle and everything like that, I think he was also a Joe Simon creation with Jack Kirby. I'm not sure. I have to dig him out. It's right up on one of these shelves. I don't know why I didn't. But anyway, he only lasted 4 issues. And what was amazing about Prez is that he was 18 years old and became president, and that's what the story was about. And we had some nepotism, because he gave his girlfriend or his sister, somebody, and his mom, he gave them positions in the government. And he brought in this Native American boy. Oh, I wish I could remember his name. Something Eagle. And brought him in and gave him a position. And there was a mob boss named Boss Smiley. And he was a sign of the times, because he was drawn as a caricature of a big smiley face that you had in the 70s. Okay? And they never really explained why he looked like that. Everybody just kind of put it up there in comic book art or something. Maybe there was something deeper. Maybe there wasn't. But it was very 70s, okay? It was, coming out of the 60s into the 70s, and it was about the young still trying to change the world and things like that. How would this jaded affair at the time of politics with Nixon and everything, was put somebody young in there. So, kind of a throwaway book, kind of cool to have. I've got 2 issues of the 4 here somewhere, and, I think one he's fighting a vampire, So this actually came out in 1993, which blows my mind because I bought my original right off the rack in 1993. 21 years now, and I still remember this story. Okay, I probably read it 3 or 4 times, and that's about it. So I went back and read it one more time because, like I said, these stories seem so familiar. But anyway, his mother named him Prez, and what Neil Gaiman brings out here is that names don't define us, but they do influence us. So this lady had, Prez's mom, had dreams of he's going to be president one day. And he was the kid in school that would get up and do the Pledge of Allegiance every day, and they weren't just words to him. It wasn't just a routine. He really loved America and was all about America. And if you go straight through the story, Neil Gaiman adds that touch of this, that this is a different America. There's many Americas out there, and this is the story of one, and we should feel bad that we didn't live in this America that had Prez Richard. And the first thing that I started noticing is that this is really about politics and religion, the two things you never talk about at a dinner table. And what it is that Prez Richard wasn't just an 18-year-old president. Neil Gaiman has transformed it to where he's our savior that we wanted. Okay, he's alluding to Bible stories in this and mixing them with Americana. Just great. I mean, he came out years later, decades later with, American Gods and stuff, so he's always had that sort of going here. And I also think there's a nod in this to Neil Gaiman's buddy Alan Moore, who got him into comics, showed him his first script, how to do a script. And because Prez Richard is a watchmaker in this that alludes to Watchmen, and it's full of smiley faces. Like I said, Boss Smiley was already there, and there's a picture of Boss Smiley in this. Okay, right there. That's Boss Smiley. And what he's done is that in that old one, what he's done is that you have the smiley face that you had in Watchmen, and he's made Prez Richard a watchmaker because he came from a town that everybody took pride in. This town, Stratford, maybe. I think it's what it's called, Stratford. That, there's clocks everywhere, but none of the clocks were in sync. And the watch and the clocks become another symbol in all this. But just to skip ahead a little bit for that big nod, is that we keep having the smiley face, and if you know your Watchmen, you knew that the smiley face represented sort of innocence without the blood, and the blood came on it and it tainted the world and stuff, right? So in this we have the smiley faces all over the place, but we also have a little spot in the book where we have a zombie character, and you can't see it, right, but she has a smiley face pin with the blood on it. And this is after everybody knows that, Prez has died. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay? But anyway, so he becomes a watchmaker, and this is where the story started being familiar. Now that I'm older, I realize he's taken some Bible stories here. And I wished I'd researched it first, but like I said, one take, one go. But, when he was 13, he wandered off from his mom. When his mom found him, he was there, and he went to the city council, and he spent hours talking to them at 13 years old, and he was making sense. And it seems like that's an old Bible story from the book of Luke or something. I'm not even going to pretend I know my Bible, because I don't. But it seems like there was a Bible character who disappeared, and he ended up meeting with the Greek, with the Romans, or he was preaching or something, and was found the same way. Then Prez Richard, when he was 16, fixed all the clocks in this town, and everybody started loving him. And then he was approached by Boss Nass. Now, knowing my Prez, because I read it back then, which was why I was like flipping out and having this surreal moment in a book about dreams, of seeing Boss Nass come in and Neil Gaiman making him freaking cool. So I'm still thinking that he's just, like a mafia boss or something. But no, it's like Prez Richards, I'm probably saying his name wrong, is, the world's wanting a savior, and this 18-year-old kid, it's a miracle that he becomes president, and it happens. Boss Nass walks in, and there's two things going on. It's almost like Prez Richard is our savior, and Boss Nass is the devil of this world, and it's like the devil tempting Jesus, because he meets him 3 times in this. But another thing that it alludes to is that it's almost like retelling the story of the Sandman, and if we had paid attention, we would have known how the Sandman story ended. Okay, where Neil Gaiman was taking it. Because he comes in and it's like Prez Richard is Morpheus the Sandman, but it's also like Boss Nass's desire tempting him. He says, do you want to be president? I'll make you president. He turns him down after showing, he walks him around in this walkabout, in a surreal walkabout, shows him every state and every city and saying, you'll be president, just remember, I'll show up for a favor and you'll remember who did it. And he's like, oh, kindly, sir. And we start getting these mosaic kind of surreal panels, you know, where we're looking up at him. And this is the temptation of Prez Richard. And he turns him down and says that he'll be president with him. And Boss Nass can do nothing but smile, but he's not happy. You know, Prez Richard is very optimistic. This also goes back to politics. This came out during 1993, and that's when Clinton was promising changes. We're going to get a young president in there, and everybody's getting really optimistic there. It was the first time that I was really kind of into politics finally, where I wasn't real cynical. You know, I grew up in the era of, you know, the Iran scandal and Colonel North, and you know, right when I was born, you know, I grew up here in Watergate and stuff. And then this also kind of like this is also relevant today because there was that sense of optimism and change with Obama, what he was promising. So, you know, it's almost like he's not just an 18-year-old president that's bringing optimism to the world, but it's like, you know, he's the savior that we want. And as he gets older and stuff, his hair starts, the president's hair starts growing out, and he starts getting a little bit of a beard, and he almost becomes like a Christ type. Now here's another part where it's right in her face about him being the watchmaker. Okay? You know, here we go, right here. You know, he makes Newsweek, and he becomes president, and he's running for president, and President Nixon always shows up. Now here's the deal, he's in bed. Is Prez dreaming, or did Richard Nixon really come into his room? And he came into his room to tell him that you're going to be the next president. And Nixon tells him, it cracks me up that Nixon was in this, it tells him that what you do with being president don't matter shit, because everybody's going to say you're the worst president ever. 20 years later, they're going to look back and be like, we should have appreciated him. And Prez looks him right dead in the eye, sits up in his bed, and is not really starstruck or anything. He's respectful. He calls him Mr. President, but he tells him that he's going to make a difference if he becomes president. He's going to heal the divide between the rich and the poor, between the black and the white, the possessors and the dispossessed. He wants to make America the kind of place he dreamed of. Pretty much talking almost like a heaven on earth and stuff. And is this not what, you know, Jesus wanted to do, you know, more or less? And when he became elected, this is another part where all this seems familiar somehow. This ends with miracles. There's 4 things they list off that happened on this one day all of a sudden. It's a really great page. If I could find this page, I would buy it. Okay? But there was a baby born with an America birthmark. They didn't have Alaska and Hawaii. There's people sitting in a porn theater, and all of a sudden at the porn, the actors stop, you know, copulating. They don't have sex, and they start doing highlights from, you know, guys and dolls. In Caesar's Palace, all the slot machines, all their money spent out at one time, and then in addition, many blind people regained their sight, deaf people regained their hearing, and an uncountable number of organic or hysterical illnesses, some of the terminal nature, spontaneously vanished, never to return. Miracles. And that is the same day that we have Prez Richards becoming president. There's this little cast from his original comic book, and there's the big, bright, optimistic, smiley face bouncing, untarnished, off the car. And he did great things, man. He got with the Middle East. There was never, if you remember the 70s, this thing has such a nostalgic feel about it, because everything that Prez on this page goes through was the big highlights of the 70s, okay? He met with people from the Middle East and averted the big energy crisis. And I am old enough to be a kid, remember being trapped in that freaking car lined up to get gas. You know, that's why I remember it, because it was pure hell to be trapped in there, and it was hot, and it stunk, and oh man, everybody had these muscle cars back then and stuff, so, you know, I don't even think they had calibrator converters back then, so it was awful. Well, he diverted it, and price of gasoline went down. He reduced the federal deficit and the national debt, and then he went on Saturday Night Live. Prez Richard went on Saturday Night Live, and John Belushi never died, because meeting Prez, I'm going to hold that up longer. Meeting Prez was so inspirational to him. He said, here's a kid who comes on the show. He's in a bunch of skits with him, keeps up with them. He's president of the United States. He works 18 hours a day. He's calm. He's got his shit together, and he's clean. And John Belushi never died. It inspired him. A miracle. And then to go at him, he approached the arms race in a different way. He said it's stupid to have all these nuclear bombs that can destroy the world 15 times over, and everybody's kind of flipping out. But the people believed him; they could do anything. So we started getting rid of our nuclear war arms and stuff like that. And then as into his third year, Boss Smiley comes back to meet him, and he turns him down again. And he says, and Boss Nasconza threatens him, He goes, you want to run again? And he finds out that Perez has gone through wanting to know who this Boss Smiley is, and there's no files on him, and Boss Smiley says that's how it should be. So he runs again. He makes it for a second term, and he starts going out with his high school sweetheart again, but she gets assassinated. And this has got to be around 1981, I believe. But what they've done is they've gone ahead and they've taken when Reagan had an assassination tip on him, is what it kind of looks like to me. And it's done by a woman who is infatuated with Ted Grant, the Wildcat, and she did it so he would notice him, just like the guy who tried to assassinate Reagan. He was in love with Jodie Foster and wanted her to notice him, and she'll know who he is now. And I always kind of wondered, man, why? Why did he use Wildcat? That's kind of out there, Ted Grant Wildcat. And with, I can't make the connection. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. I was always kind of like, well, that's weird, Ted Grant, celebrity. And I was sitting there thinking, well, he is a boxer. Maybe he's, on this world, that's the closest thing to a celebrity, Gaiman can find. And what was so funny is that Prez was forgiving. He came out and said there was no hard feelings with Ted Grant and made it clear he even went and visited the crazy lady and offered her clemency. And she refused it, and she ended up going to the chair. And Prez got shot in the moment, and this is where you got to kind of look at the art. This is where the art comes with the details. Now that she's dead, he's lost the love of his life, the weight's getting to him a little bit. He keeps rubbing the spot where he was shot, and they don't tell you in the dialogue, but he decides to go back into his room. He starts watching baseball. I mean, he's an All-American kid and stuff, and all of a sudden, the Boss Smiley comes for the third time and tempts him with, I can bring the love of your life back. And he refuses. He refuses to do that and work for Boss Smiley. He can't find out anything. So Prez's term ends. And by this point, I'm sitting here like, this is so familiar. And back then, I could not put together that, this was the temptation of Prez. And he turned it down. People did not want Prez to not be president anymore. Neil Gaiman even goes back to the short stories that he had before this. What was it, Fables and Reflections or something? But he wrote a story about a guy from San Francisco at the turn of the century, 1800s, who claimed that he was the Emperor of the United States. And that's what people in San Francisco wanted to do. There was a movement in San Francisco where they wanted to say that Prez was the Emperor of the United States, a little nod to long-time fans there. But no, he just went home, and he just did nothing but fix watches for a while. And things didn't get bad, they just weren't any good anymore. And then we see Ted Grant, kind of being a drunk now. He's alcoholic at the bar. The golden times were over, the golden child. He just, he just sat around repairing clocks and stuff. And then finally the Secret Service and the government come back to him many, many times, asking him to come back, be an aide, assist the new president, be an advisor. And then he tells a story, and I finally get why he picked the Wildcat. He starts telling the story that there's a polar bear skin. Is that what it was? No, there's a tiger skin rug that Teddy Roosevelt had shot and killed. And the feet of the great walk on that rug every day. And this tiger hears all the secrets being spoken, all the plans of the government. And he looks at the Secret Service people while he has a cog. He's still fixing watches and clocks while he's talking to them. And he says, do you think that tiger would rather be alive or dead? And they say alive, and they finally got it. And then they show Ted Grant now all of a sudden being back in the spotlight with a woman, sober, clean shaven, and he's back on top, just like that tiger. He went. The tiger and the wildcat are the same thing. And this is also the same time that when Ted Grant's back on his feet, we also have Prez Richard, who has taken to the road, man. He's hitchhiking, talking to people. People were spotting him all over the place, and just like Elvis, and people were saying that he and Elvis were secretly, fighting crime, and he became mythic. People were still missing him and stuff, and everybody was wanting their savior. And all he's doing is living. And then a strange thing happened. There just came a day where everybody knew Prez was dead. Nobody knew how. No news reported it. Everybody in America just knew it, and they donned their black armbands. And this is the thing, they just knew. And the rumor started. How did he die? They think that he was shot buying bread to feed the starving kids and the homeless. He didn't buy the bread for him. He was buying it for them. And this is where the little Watchmen era thing comes in. We went from, we can see it maybe. You just be patient. Alright. See the zombie lady? Okay. Look at her badge. She has the smiley face with the Watchmen blood on it and a picture of Ted Grant. And they're saying that she came back and finished the job of killing Prez, even though that she died in the electric chair. They still said she'd come back. And he, when Prez was president, smiley face, unmarked, and now that he's dead and gone, we've got the grim and gritty of the real world. They're saying another president had him killed. And, it's almost conspiracy theories going back to other historical, stuff like Kennedy. And they think that he also went back home, and he was shot because the Secret Service didn't recognize him when he tried to enter back to his home because he had a beard and stuff like that. That sounds familiar. Anybody knows a historical or religious reference to that, let me know. It's an ironic death. But nobody knew. Some people think that he died as a John Doe and just got sent to a crematorium, cremated before anybody, claimed the body or even knew who he was, but it didn't matter. And this is where the Sandman and the Endless step in. Death comes to collect him. And he's like, this sounds weird, but am I dead? She's like, yep, as a dodo. He went, huh. So he walks around, and he tells the story that his dad told him. He said that his dad left them when they were 4 or died. I can't remember which one. Anyway. But his dad left him this pocket watch. And when he was like about 8, he found a book on fixing watches, and then he saved up money to get tools, and then he got a few watches to practice on. And he starts talking about if you walk into his dad told him a story of if you walk in the desert and you find a watch, it has to be fixed. And this is alluding to more religious stuff, like when he meets Boss Smiley again and thinks he's going to heaven, he's met death, he's saying, oh, there's more watches out there, there's more Americas out there, because Boss Smiley is not God, and death lets him know that, but somebody has made this realm. And it's saying that, there's a watchmaker out there. Somebody had made every one of these watches. Somebody's got to fix them, though, because they've been sitting out in the desert, abandoned. So you think he's going to heaven. You think he's been dropped off, the Golden Gates, angels. Death, she took a shining to him. And all of a sudden he walks in and you find out that Boss Smiley rules this world. And you're finally mine. He wanted him. He wanted Prez. And before we can really find out truly why, Sandman shows up. And Death had gone and told Morpheus, you might want to go check on this kid before the boss gets a hold of him. Now, this really didn't really make a lot of sense to me why, your Sandman jumped up and Boss Smiley is sitting here saying, I can kill you here. You have no authority here. This is my realm. Even though he didn't make it, he runs his realm. And Sandman just goes ahead and takes Prez by the hand, walks off with him, says, don't worry about him. You are you are a story. I can't remember how you put it. You have an interest in tales and stories that puts you in my jurisdiction. And he walks off, and he's, Boss Smiley's sitting there yelling, you can't do this. This is my realm and stuff. And basically what happens is that Prez could let go. Okay, Boss Smiley ended up becoming petty because this is his realm. Everything that happens here is his, and it drove him nuts that Prez would not do what he wanted, even though it was his realm. And what we found out later is that this even fit in with what Neil Gaiman's end story was with Morpheus, is that, you know, Morpheus dies. Morpheus abandons his kingdom and finally dies and lets go. He didn't become petty. This is what he could have been if he held on for so long. And yet again, that's another thing. It goes into realms and kings and who owns the realm and who can let go. His brother Destruction begged Morpheus, just go with me, leave your realm, everything will run without you. And he wouldn't do it because he's into rules. Sandman's into rules and stuff, and there's etiquette and rules, and he wouldn't do it then. Then you see this, you have Destruction who just abandoned his realm, and then you have Boss Smiley here who will not let it go, and he's become petty, and God complex. So Prez starts talking more about there's other watches in the desert. They all need to be fixed, and he goes through a doorway, and Sandman tells him that's his doorway. And he pulls out another watch, and he gives it to the Sandman. Now what's amazing about the Sandman is that if you look in the background, he gives Sandman his father's watch because it's an honor and a big thank you. And he just walks off. And there's a box, there's a treasure chest that Sandman has that popped up in Seasons of the Mist, I think, and when you open it up, you'll see things in there. And some of those things, you saw a bottled city, and that became Ramadan. I think that's what it's called, from issue 50. Now you know where the pocket watch came from. There's always things in those little boxes, and if you pay attention throughout the little stories, you'll see where Sandman got this stuff. And Prez walks off, and now they think that he's going from world to world, being a watchmaker, fixing the watches that is our world of America. He's become a savior. It's almost like Neil Gaiman's trying to tell you why there's so many similar stories of Jesus and other religious figures that I'm not going to say because I don't want to say their name wrong and be disrespectful. Why that story seems to, maybe these stories seem to repeat themselves. Maybe it's the same watchmaker, watch repairman, fixing all these watches and stuff. Anyway, thanks for hanging in there. Sandman number 54. I'm going to drink some vodka and orange juice and finish my peanuts. You guys have a great day. Read some Sandman, guys. Come on. Jeez.